Hey everybody, Sean here, and welcome to Revealing Truth. This was the clip that popped up this morning, and for the life of me, I can't understand why people like Micah would go out of their way to willingly defy God. He says that he saw God face to face and lived.
Hey everybody, so I want to talk about encountering the face of God. Yes, I have seen God face to face, and I'm not dead. Yes, I have seen God's face, and I'm telling you about it.
So Micah says that, but Scripture says the opposite. God told Moses that no man can see God's face and live. So you have a simple decision to make. You can believe God, or you can believe Micah. But if what Micah is saying contradicts God's truth, then only a fool would choose to believe him. And he's not the first person to lie about this. Anna Werner said the same thing. And she even shares the secret. We don't even need to watch this because it's a lie. But Micah always outdoes all these other phonies with his stories, though.
I stood before God the Father. I have. And I remember being in his lap. And I had my hands on his face. And I was combing his beard with my fingers. It was so cool. And lightning was around his each strand of hair, and it would zap my fingers. It was so cool. And I remember putting my fingers into his hair. God has hair.
No, Micah wasn't touching God the Father's face. God is spirit. And no, God the Father doesn't have hair either, being that he's spirit. So despite Micah indirectly calling God a liar, he's got comment after comment from deceived people that choose to believe him instead of God. So, with hopes of helping those being deceived by these false teachers, let's review a past video that explains in detail why God and his word in the Bible are true and these people are liars.
John 1 says that no one has ever seen God except for Jesus, and 1 John tells us this again. Yet, in Genesis 32, Jacob says that he saw God face to face, and in Exodus 33, it says that God spoke to Moses face to face like a friend. But just 9 verses later, God tells Moses that nobody can see God's face and live. So, on the surface, this seems a bit confusing. People have even used the example of Moses in their past comments when defending false teachers and their trips to heaven and hanging out with God. The first thing we need to look at is the Hebrew word for face, which is panim. And we can see that it doesn't necessarily mean face like on a human. It can mean like the surface of the deep, or face of the waters, or in the open. The second thing we need to remember is that God is spirit. And Jesus tells us in Luke that spirits don't have flesh and bones, and therefore don't have physical faces either. So what does it mean when it says God spoke to Moses face to face if this isn't literal? This is most likely a figure of speech called anthropomorphism, in which human qualities are applied to God. So face to face is idiomatic and also metaphorical. In verse 11, the idiom face to face can simply be understood to mean intimately. Moses spoke with God as man speaks to a friend. In verses 20 and 23, face and back are in reference to God's glory and goodness that we see in verses 18 and 19. Since God is spirit, and since glory and goodness are both intangible, we can take face and back to signify varying degrees of glory. God's hand in verse 22 is an obvious reference to God's protection. In the Bible, God often communicates using terms easily understood in the human experience. So God's use of anthropomorphism in Exodus 33 was a perfect way to describe what was happening. As humans, we know the importance of somebody's face. To readily identify somebody, we study their face. It's also the face of a person that reveals the most information about their character, mood, and personality. But if all we catch is a glimpse of a person from behind, we are left without a lot of valuable information, and it's difficult to identify a person if all we can see is a back view. When God told Moses, "You cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live," he was saying that seeing God as he is in the fullness of his glory is more than any mortal man can tolerate. Therefore, to protect Moses, God was only going to reveal that portion of his majesty and power that was humanly possible to absorb. God communicated this plan to Moses in a way that we can all understand. You cannot look at me full in the face, meaning it's impossible for you to know everything about me, but I will allow you to see my back. I will reveal to you a small portion of my nature so as not to overwhelm you. And all of this makes Jesus' words to Philip all the more amazing. Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. When Jesus walked this earth with his glory veiled, they could look him in the face. On one brief occasion, Jesus' glory was revealed in this world at the Transfiguration. And isn't it interesting that Moses was there speaking to the glorified Lord face to face? But people cannot defend these false trips to heaven and talking to God face to face based on Moses' experience. So, as always, leave your thoughts and comments below, and until next time, take care and God bless.